City Council for June 11th, 2018. If we can have the roll call, please.
Creighton?
Here.
Raymond is absent. Vieira?
Here.
Vineyard?
Present.
Price?
Here.
We have a quorum. Public comment. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.3, citizens wishing to address the City Council regarding only the items on the agenda may do so when the item is read for consideration. Please state your name and address or community of residence. Keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Under the provisions of the California Government Code, the City Council may not discuss or take action on any item that is not on the agenda.
Is there any public comment this evening? Seeing none?
Budget workshop. Proposed 2018-2019 fiscal year budget regarding other funds.
Okay, who wants to go first? Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. We are going to cover fiscal year 18-19 preliminary budget for other funds. Starting with General Fund Capital, which is fund number 0003. For this fund, we are projecting all these different projects. Then the total revenue would be 1.4 million, or I should say 1.5 million if you round it up. So the next page would be page number 23, has all the expenditures associated for those different projects. And it is basically expenditures are equal to expenditures, so there is basically no surplus or shortfall for that fund.
And what page was that again, McQuinn?
22.
Oh,
page
22.
Number 22.
Oh, I was going to say, I thought it was 3. It didn't work out. Okay.
Any questions on this fund? Page 22 and page 23.
Most of these are grant-related projects or Measure V, SB1 projects, so they're reimbursable, but we do have staff available to answer any questions that we have.
We're lighting up here. Who's first? Mr. Creighton?
Somebody else lit up before me, I think.
Well, I can't.
So LaQuinder, you said the grants and other things. How do you have those identified so we can, as we flip through these, where does it show like SB1, then the other two?
SB1 and
So you said
that's
page
a
20,
different fund.
22 is a culmination of the first 21 pages?
No, we are starting on page 22 because we are not going over general fund today.
Okay.
But we are only doing other.
On page 23 on his copy.
Okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I just want to make sure I knew where I was at.
Strange.
Thank you, Mayor.
Ms. Vieira?
Same PDF as in the-
Oh, that kind of answered my question. Sorry, I was
Okay.
starting on the wrong page as well.
Sorry, it's going to be fund number 0003, General Fund Capital. I guess for some of the printouts, it starts on page number 23. Mine says 22, so that's why.
Okay.
Okay, any questions on this fund?
Mr. Creighton?
Yeah, for LaQuinder again. So we are on 0003, and that is what again?
General Fund Capital.
Where do those monies come from?
These monies are
How did you get money to make the budget here? Where'd that come from? I don't see that.
So some of the projects are covered by a grant, so that's why when money comes in, that goes under the revenue section, which is basically, it says under the green line, it says total revenues, so that would be the combination of all these grants. And for example, the first one we have is the tree inventory grant, that's $30,000. It will be coming from CAL FIRE. So the rest are CMAQ grants. For each one has their separate account.
Well, can you go back to I just want to understand what I'm reading here. So you go back to the tree inventory grant, CAL FIRE.
Mm-hmm.
Then first column, you have nothing. Second column, there's 67,000. Third column, 53,000. And then you mentioned the 30,000.
Okay, so,
what do those other funds mean?
I'm sorry, let me clarify. So we are looking at the right-hand side column only, which is proposed budget for fiscal year 18-19. 67,000, which we have right there, is the actuals for fiscal year 16-17. That's how much the revenue we had, or the grant we had.
Okay, that doesn't show up on our papers here.
Then 53,738, which was for the current fiscal year projected grant revenue amount we have. So we are projecting 30,000 for fiscal year 18-19 to be received.
Okay, so we've received 67,000, 53,000, and now we're going to receive 30,000 for tree
Correct.
inventory.
Correct.
So almost $140,000, $150,000 for, we haven't got a tree, we did the tree inventory, right? Where we
Lori
at?
can answer that question maybe.
That was our tree master plan. We've done that. We've actually updated our city tree ordinance. Now we have a few more trees that need to be in place, as well as our canopy study, and that'll all be encompassed. We have, it's through 2019, so we're good. So these are carryover monies.
Okay. Because there's no detail with any of this stuff, it's just there and then we have to figure it out, okay? So that's what you guys are working on with the schools then? The tree partners in the schools? So I want to get this out of the way right off the bat. With this Fund 003 dash tree inventory, why don't we have sub-line items that identify where those monies go? So we show the 30,000 this year, then you break it out, you'd say, okay, 4,000 to buy the trees, 6,000 for the document, and, you know, et cetera, stuff like that, so that we could see, I mean, we're just getting a bulk number, and that's it. So we don't know what are we doing here?
So this is basically just the revenue side. That's why it's only one account listed, because the money comes in, say, one payment. Well, if you go to next page, that's where the expenditures are. So as you can see, each project basically have their own separate account. But
Slow down, I'm trying to keep up with you. So Fund 003-03161, where's the expenditures,
It's under
3161?
M006.
next page.
This is where we were at here. So M. Okay, so is everybody following where we're at on that? Clear as mud or no? How'd you guys get to M? What does the M stand for?
That's basically a separate account for that specific project. So all the CIP projects we have, their accounts usually have one letter in there, and they all fall under. So if you look far left-hand side where the number is 0003-1080-M003, or in this case M006, so that's the account number specifically for that project. So the 0003 means it's a separate fund, it's fund number. 1080 is a separate department. and M006 is a account number.
Okay,
So each year, we have a different letter identifying capital improvement projects. So this project was started, 2 years ago, so we're on M. So each year, it changes the letter, so MNP, so that identifies the year of the project, and these are carryover projects from previous years.
so to answer my question then, the M006 shows 30, okay, 03161 shows 30 in, and then M006 shows 30 out, but we don't know what you guys did, what you bought everything with, so there's no,
So nothing is done yet because these are the projected numbers. So, of course, we are expecting 30,000 to come in, then of course we are spending 30 grand on this project specifically.
We
So-
will have 30,000 coming in. This was a project that was started, and we received $167,000. Of that, we did several items, and when we brought the project to council, it had a budget, it had a breakdown for each item, whether it be the master plan, the ordinance, the canopy study, and then the purchasing of trees, which was one component of it. So each year, we've carried over the remaining balances. So
So
we're left
to-
with 30,000.
so then to answer what I'm looking for, not the balance, but I'm just looking for like descriptions, what we did on all the rest of the funds we're gonna talk about.
So if
So
you're,
are they all like this, just money in, what we approved and money projected to be spent?
so,
no detail.
if you look at other accounts, say for example, professional services, which will have more than one project, say, or services, we do have details for you, but since, this specific account is related
Okay.
to only one fund, so if you would like to see the details, I can run a report for you on that account. That should list all the cost we have in that fund or account.
Okay, 'cause just the question I had was, we get these monies and people ask, what are we spending on? And then I go to the sheet and I don't know what we spent on. I don't have a detail to tell me what I can tell them what we did. So that's why I was asking that question. So
So-
as we go through this, there's some that have more detail and others that
Correct,
don't.
because if there is more than one service or contract is covered under that account, those details are provided.
This particular grant, we have a breakdown and we have a budget of everything that's outlined, that was approved, and it doesn't have a breakdown because it all goes into the same fund, but we have a spreadsheet that has everything if you'd like to look at that.
Yeah, because it starts at 1516, and I'm sure that the council then approved everything, but I don't know what we're working on from that council when they approved 1516, so
Well,
I'm
I-
just,
Well, this isn't something that can change on this
no,
particular one.
but it'd be nice to know what
Yes.
we're voting to approve stuff, so I just,
well, at this
Education.
point, it's just in the 1819, so this is only
right.
projected
But they said the list of projects were in
from the last.
1516, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what information I'm looking for.
If you would like details, I can print a detailed report for you on this fund. That
Do
will
we have
list every-
the information on opengov.com, or are we doing that yet? Is
I'm
that
sorry?
online? Do you have to? print
It wouldn't have that much detail, but I can print something from Springbrook.
Okay, I don't think necessarily on this one, but I just want to articulate that we need more detail what we're looking at.
Would you just like it for fiscal year 17, 18, or prior years as well?
That was your
Paul,
What's that?
would you just like it for fiscal year 17, 18, or 15, 16, and 17 as well?
No, I think my comment was general that as we're doing this budget right now today, as you guys are working on this, that I would like to see more detail because I wasn't privy to all the line items you're talking about.
Mm-hmm,
So if I could have a chance to look those over,
okay.
like some would be 15, 16, some would be this year, some would be 17, 18. So
Okay.
it correlates with what we're doing. Just detail, that's all. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other questions?
Ms. Vieira.
So I know most of these are grant. Is it broken out anywhere what the city's paying outside of the grant, or are these all 100% grant funded?
Yes, it will be basically the project account number. It would be, say, for example, M006. If you see it under any other fund, that would be listed with that account number specifically to show the match. But nothing is coming from general fund as a match, so it would be from either gas tax or SB1, or for some projects, not in this particular case, but some of them are Measure V as well.
And that's like the Phase 2 pedestrian improvement project, because I see a much larger number there projected, so that's probably Measure B.
Correct.
Laquinder, I'm kind of assuming the same thing when we look at the numbers. Also for like the traffic signal synchronization, that's gone up, tenfold. Is that also, is there any way to identify, is that a grant or is that Measure B, or we just have to ask, or?
So for these projects, sometimes, we only want to budget how much work can be done in a year. Say one project could be costing the city $1.5 million, but if we know that we won't be able to complete that whole project in 1 year, we won't budget $1.5 million. We will be budgeting over the years. Say, we can only do $200,000 in this year, so we will only budget that much. So that's why these amounts do fluctuate.
Actually, if I can speak to that project itself, the initial cost for that was the engineering cost, and now we're getting ready to do the construction costs. So that's why there's going to be different costs for different phases.
And that was scheduled 2 years ago, I believe.
Yeah.
When we did the three-way stop there at Olive and Winton Way. That was projected, it was going to be a stoplight, and all the synchronization and everything was going to come in with that.
Throughout all of those.
Throughout
And
all of
we
those.
have our engineer, if you have
Correct.
more detailed questions on that, we also
So
have.
it's not 436,000 to synchronize the lights, that's the remaining portion of the project. So, for instance, on that line item, in actual 16-17 was 1,100, and then we're projecting 436,000.
That encompasses several stoplights that will be synchronized, as well as a median over at Bell. Applegate.
And then to find out where those funds are coming from, where do I find that on here?
So if you look, that one itself is, signalization is 3168.
It's a CMAC grant. It's a 3168 account number. It's about the sixth.
So that's a
one.
grant?
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
So then at the bottom, which on page 24 for us, where it says total expenditures, 1.4 million, 1.4. So that's not out of the general fund, that's just out of all of the grants total?
Correct.
Great.
On that comment that Ms. Vera made, the 1.471,393, and then also the $1,471,393. How'd you guys hit that perfect coming in and going out? Is that just a guesstimation going out?
Correct. So whatever we are bringing in, that's all we are going to spend, basically.
Because
So-
we've had, I'm sorry,
My question is, what happens if something goes wrong? If we're budgeted at we're budgeted what we brought in exactly.
Then
So
we-
on all these grants, say the synchronization project, say that we get a change order and they got to demobilize and remobilize the his for another $45,000. Do we have contingencies in all these type things?
we do have contingencies, but we also have, so we have what we're going to be receiving as far as the grant, and then we also know what our match portion is, so that's outlined in a different category, so that the full project should be funded here, and if for some reason it goes beyond the contingencies, that's going to have to come back to you for approval and authorization. But right now, we've budgeted it so that's not coming out of general fund. There are other funds budgeting or offsetting our local match for these projects, because most of the grants are not 100% funded.
My main question was that, say that we're coming in with revenue, we're going out exactly the same revenue. We have contingencies in case something happens.
Yes, and we know that when we go out to bid, we know what we can work within, and if we receive a bid that's way above what we projected, because we have an engineer's estimate, and that's how we got our grant amount in the first place. So we base that off of our bid, and when we get the bid proposals, if they're way out of sync, then we're going to obviously have to bring back to council, reject the bids, and go back out, or
So
come
in
to
that
you for
scenario, what do we
further.
do if the bids are high because everybody's working right now?
Then we'll have to,
Then we miss this number? If they go,
then it'll
that's-
have to come back to you for a budget amendment, and then we'll have to find another funding pool to come from,
okay, so there's no
other
room,
than general fund.
there's slim room for error, if any. Okay.
Do you want to speak to that?
Can you go to the
Can you please come to the mic?
Right there's one mic at the end of the table.
Sit at the end by Brian.
So,
Excuse me, Michael, can you also introduce yourself?
hello, Michael Hayes, your city engineer.
You might have to clip on that mic.
Can everyone hear me now?
I think there
No.
might be a button on the mic.
Try Justin's.
There you go. It's on now.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So the consulting engineer's estimate includes a slim contingency of roughly 10% of construction costs. Some of that, because of the time that's elapsed since the project was originally estimated, would be consumed with inflation. If there is an overage, the first place that we look is back to CMAQ. Because there's a number of agencies inside the MCAG umbrella, there's typically some funds that MCAG reserves that they do not award, and there's sometimes an overage available there. And if that's not the case, then we would have to look for other funding sources to make up that. But in the past, we've been very close. Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, next one is our fund number 0004. This is Major H Fund. As you can see, we are projecting our sales and use tax revenue 1.9 million. And we are actually planning to apply for a CAL FIRE, I shouldn't say CAL FIRE. We are planning to apply for a grant to obtain a new engine for $650,000. So that brings our total revenue to $2.6 million. So next would be down below that would be all the list of all the expenditures we are projecting to have under that fund. As you can see, OPEB charges are $35,478, and salaries and wages are $430,000. That does list 5 officers, police officers, and 1 police sergeant. Then under salaries and wages for part-timers, it is $102,000, which contains a police clerk, 1, 20 hours per week. Then we have salaries for reserves, which are 4 reserves. Then we have part-time salaries for dispatch, which is 3 people, 30 hours per week. Then we have part-time salaries for reserve firefighters, that's 3 personnel members and 30 hours per week. Then we have all the benefits related to salaries or personnel. Then under special departmental expense for fire under 2030, as you can see, there is a $100,000 budgeted, which is for the match for that grant. The grant will require 10% match from the city side, which would be $65,000, and $35,000 is budgeted to get that engine fitted. Right above that, we have machinery and equipment, which is $30,000. This is for the police. We do have a school district who is buying a new vehicle, and which will require a match from the city side, so that those funds are budgeted for that match. Then, of course, under rents and leases, we have $87,000, which is our big ladder trucks lease payment. Then we also budgeted under professional services part of our contract with CAL FIRE, which is a partial amount of $350, is being budgeted under Major H, and the rest of the contract is being budgeted under general fund. And under, of course, machinery and equipment, we are listing $650,000 for the new engine, and it's only based on if we do get that grant, then we will purchase that. Otherwise, we will come to the council if there is any alternative for that.
Also, we want to address the fact that there is no longer a transfer to the general fund according
Correct.
in accordance with the audit.
As you can see, there is more officers budgeted under Major H, because during our audit process for the state, they were not fully understanding our interfund transfer going from Major H to general fund, which we were transferring $1.1 million every year. To avoid that confusion, we decided not to make that transfer this next fiscal year, and we budgeted 6 new officers under Major H to avoid that confusion. So our total expenditures would be $2.5 million, and we do have a surplus of $34,000 after these projected expenditures.
Ms. Viera?
LaQuinder, is that the same reason we have reserve firefighters under the Measure H and then also dispatch? Because they were being paid out of general fund? Or is that the reserve firefighters, is that a portion of our contract and we're just re-identifying it? Or is that in addition to our current contract?
The reserve firefighter is something we started this year. It is something new. It was not used to be budgeted under general fund or under Major H. This is something new we starting going forward. But for reserves for PD, they were always budgeted under Major H.
Okay, thank you.
Justin, feel free to correct me.
Mayor, Council, the Reserve Firefighter Program was previously in the 2030 budget, and then when we brought the new ordinance last year, it was for fires only, so there wasn't any reserves that were, there was one reserve that was active, and then we gained 8 more into it, so that was in the last year's budget of the reserve program at 3063 for $5,000 to cover the reserves cost for the active fires that they go on within a fiscal year. The thought process of moving in Measure H was the ability to send them out of county and use that money for a cost reimbursement back to the city once we can staff the engines at a 3.0 staffing ICS type and then get reimbursement back through Cal OES.
Ms. Fear.
Yes, under communications, we had, I know there's something highlighted for the 17-18 budget of $28,455, and usually it's $800 or $900. Then again, this year we've estimated $7,000. What was that additional $28,000 for?
I highlighted it because we budgeted this high amount, but we did not spend it. But this is mainly for the officers' cell phones and stuff. So going forward, we need to kind of revisit this amount because last year it was budgeted high. So I just budgeted 700 based on the actuals, what happened prior year. So that's why.
Okay, thank you.
It was highlighted for my information, sorry.
Justin, if I might, the reserves that you were referring to, do they ever participate in strike teams?
Yes.
And that is totally reimbursed by way of
Cal OES.
forestry or CAL FIRE or whoever, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Correct.
Mr. Vineyard.
Yeah, so essentially, what I'm looking at here is we're kind of augmenting our general fund with the Measure H by having all these people on Measure H, which is slated to go away not too far down the future. And if it does, the voters decide not to re-implement it or continue it, what happens to those people on this? They go away, correct? If we don't have the money in the general fund?
We will absorb whatever we can, but chances are very slim.
Okay. To me, we're kind of setting a dangerous precedent. I understand back when it was passed, it was for fire and police. And we got into that mode of putting people on it to get them on it. And some of them go on it for 3 years and then have to come off, and then we have to absorb them in the general fund. I hate to keep putting more people on it. So we really need to be really careful on setting that precedence of depending on it and start working towards weeding them off and really kind of using that towards equipment, et cetera, at least in my opinion, because I'd hate to lose those people should the citizens of this city decide that that Measure H isn't important anymore. Thank you.
Mr. Green.
LaQuinder, on Measure H, the 2.5 revenue and the 2.5 expenditure, are we balanced at that fund currently?
Yes. Yes,
So-
we do have a surplus of $34,000.
So let me qualify that surplus. Every year we generate revenue based on the tax on the
Correct.
Measure H. So we're not in a deficit, we're not overspending because we had more money put in the bank account when we first got started. We're doing,
We are staying within our limit, so we are projecting to bring in 2.5, and we are spending only 2.5. So it is within our limit, so it's not being overspent.
okay. So, and I just want to comment on Mr. Vineyard, what he said. So Measure H and the general fund are basically the same, other than Measure H is identified for only police and fire. And the way we divvy this up, and help me understand this, that you guys move personnel into that to balance it, or
So
how do we answer Jim's question about we have personnel there, how do we get there and they're not in general fund?
So ideally, we should have this fund only for one-time expenditures, like we want to buy equipment, we want to have any one-time expenditure, mainly equipment in this case, if they need weapons or they need new cars or trucks stuff. It is not really good to have personnel in there just because personnel is a continuous expenditure and this measure is limited time. But looking at our financial situation, since we are not spending as much on buying new equipment, so in this case, like for going forward, if we are not making that transfer, we are putting people there, but that transfer was basically to cover personnel cost anyways.
So long story short is, we did it because that's where we're at, we have to do that.
Correct.
And if you look
But
at
the
the
trend
one,
is to get away from it as we get our financial solvency, move these people out of this fund and buy more equipment. But until then, we're going to do this. And then with the purchase of the fire engine, with the $650,000 that's a grant, what we've done currently with the two, what do you call it, command vehicles we purchased, with the purchase of this $650,000 vehicle, like we do with the command vehicles, you send those out on, because CAL FIRE does our fires, so they go out and augment other fires, and we get revenue on that. And within a few years, we pay these new vehicles off, and the city makes money on that to be able to buy more fire equipment and fire necessities. So with this, my question on that is, with this new engine, you'd be able to send that out on strike teams or whatever to bring revenue. We'd be not only get a new engine, we could potentially get revenue in to keep buying equipment and stuff for the fire department.
Yeah, it would be a reoccurring revenue. Mass mutual aid assistance throughout California is using local government resources to get reimbursement through Cal OES. So every year I try to send as much stuff as I can out for the city of Atwater for reimbursement rates back. Unfortunately, some of the equipment I can't send out because if it goes out, it might break down, and then when it breaks down on the incident doesn't cover the cost to fix that piece of equipment. The general fund covers the cost to fix that piece of equipment. So the thought process is this Measure H isn't sunsets, I believe, in 2021. So with the $650,000 to buy a new piece of apparatus, a Type 1 with 1,500 GPM pump, which would meet right in the median part for reimbursement rates, is we would be able to recoup that money and be able to have a piece of equipment and fix the old piece of equipment that is currently our frontline piece of equipment, to have a reserve, a solid reserve to be able to be sent out, or the frontline piece of equipment to be sent out as a reliable piece of equipment.
So this is just a good example of staff seeing an opportunity with a grant, and then to turn that grant into a potential revenue stream to upgrade the equipment that we can't afford to fix right now. So this is a plus.
And if we could do it right, we could be done and paid for, and you'll own the piece of equipment by the end of the 21 fiscal year, like the truck.
It's
Very good.
2023, just
2023.
Very good. Thank you.
Mr. Vineyard?
Yeah, I do also want to make sure the public understands that also the reason that they had to separate the Measure H money from the general fund money is because the state sees it as commingling of funds. And that's really not appropriate. Because once the money goes into the general fund, they don't really know whether that money is actually spent for where it's supposed to. Even though you could say it's tracked here, the impression is you don't really know if it's really spent for what it's needs. So I do understand the separation of the funds, because the impression is it really spent there? So it is important that we do separate them, and I understand that greatly. But I do understand too that we do need to find a way to bring in that additional income to get those officers and the other personnel off of that. And I've been that adamant about that since we first passed Measure H. So I do want us to continue looking that way and trying to find that alternative to get them off of there. And I do understand that at this time we have to do it, but we still need to keep looking. Thank you.
Justin, if you could, you made a statement here just a second ago about if a piece of equipment goes out on a strike team and it breaks down out there, that we're holding the responsibility for the repair of that. Is that correct?
Yeah, if it's mechanically defected by our means, so they're traveling en route from Atwater to, say, Reading,
Yeah.
and it breaks down going down the road, it's not incident-based, the incident's not going to pay for it.
What do we get paid for then?
We get reimbursement rates for the type of engine that we send and the personnel that we send on a 16-hour maximum day allowance.
Well, I'm specifically for, because I seem to recall in past discussions that if there was some kind of damage or something that occurs, breakdown, that, we would
So
get money from other sources to make repairs and what have you, so,
damages on the incident would be covered.
okay.
So a tire that blew a tire or something on an assignment, that would be covered. A tree fell on the cab of the engine or broke the mirror, that would be covered.
Okay.
But a mechanical defect as far as traveling to or from an incident that they can't justify that was caused by the incident or the assignment that you were on. So
we're going to an incident,
radiator-
but they can't say whether or not it was covered.
by the
Going to the
incident itself.
incident.
So you check in on the incident base and then you go through a
Yeah.
demo process, so.
You gotta get there first to get the clock rolling.
Okay.
Well, actually, the clock rolls as soon as they roll out, but there could be a defect. So that's why they do a pretty extensive investigation as far as what caused
Yeah,
it, and if they can account for it
okay.
being
Well,
caused en route to it,
Right.
they'll pay for it. But if they say, well, you guys should have caught this before it left, then it does fall back.
okay,
I do know that much.
I just wanted
Yeah.
that point of clarification
Correct.
there, because I remembered before getting, briefed that there was a reimbursement process of some sort, or pay for repairs or that kind of thing. So, okay, that clears it up.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay.
Any other questions? So next fund is 0005. This is Ferrari Ranch Project Fund. For this fund, I believe we do have a reimbursement agreement or a professional services agreement in place to cover all the expenditures for this project specifically. So we are basically saying reimbursable fees would be projected at $5,000, and then we do have these 3 different categories where those funds will be spent. Any question on that?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Gray.
So on the Ferrari Ranch project, the new project out there off the Highway 99 in Green Sands, people are asking, when are we going to start building the development? The city doesn't do that, the developer does, and the developer markets that, the developer does everything out there, not the city, is that correct?
Yep.
So when people see this in the budget, the Ferrari Ranch project, $5,000, I believe, that's their project that they're marketing and developing. They're going to bring water, sewer, power, all that type of stuff out there and develop that area, not the city. So these costs just are for what?
Basically, when any services are done through the, even with the professional services, but city is being reimbursed for all those, but I do not know all the details on that project, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Mark.
Well, let me get to the point where I'm going to go with this, is that there's a lot of discussion about trying to do something at Ferrari Ranch, and I don't know the project in detail, or just we haven't spent any time on it. There's people that approach me about hotels, truck stops, gas stations, they want to know things about this. Then if I send them to staff, how do we recover our costs? Because they should be getting sent to the developer to answer those questions. Because if they're coming to the planning building asking questions. We're not developing that, they are, so with that development agreement, that would cover any cost. So if they're doing window, if you're doing any time at the window, you would write this down for, like, say, engineering or whatever.
So there is a portion of the annexation area that is not a part of the Ferrari Ranch project proper. It is referred to as the Ferrari Ranch annexation. So there is a portion of that that the city is responsible to provide services for, but essentially the project, the Ferrari Ranch proponents are responsible to construct the infrastructure, and there's a reimbursement agreement to be set up between the benefited parcels that are not part of the Ferrari Ranch project, but are within the Ferrari Ranch annexation area. As far as the development of those parcels outside the project proper goes, the city does have to provide the counter service at our cost because those are not a part of the project. But as far as anything that's within the project area, those questions are referred to the developer.
So those costs that you talk about would be reimbursable by those developers of the smaller projects that aren't part of the proper Ferrari Ranch project per se, in the Green Sand Corner area and along Ashby Road there.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So the next fund is 0007, which is Measure V fund. So we are projecting a revenue of 500,000 for next fiscal year. Then we do have a list of about 6 different projects under that. And as you can see, our expenditures are exceeding our revenue. Reason for that is we are collecting Measure V funds in this current fiscal year, so we will have some savings in that, so that's why this fund is basically $95,000 over from our revenue amount. So there is fund balance to cover that additional cost. So next fund would be, sorry, any questions on that?
If I could just make one point. For the Winton Way project, we're working through that right now through the Measure B committee. This amount that is indicated here for 150 million, or wait a minute, 150,000. But we're working through that on a little creative financing, and it's going to also be hopefully where we're going to address the most critical part of Winton Way, specifically between Broadway to Juniper, and then address from Juniper to Bellevue at a later date once the sewer project and all that is completed, that is slated to happen. Correct with that, Michael?
Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Okay, so I just want to make sure people understand, you know, that there's money coming for that one improvement project, and hopefully it'll come in the very near future. Mr. Raymond.
My question is for the city manager. The $150,000 for the curb, gutter, and sidewalk replacement, is any of that going to be allocated for the 3rd Street Mulberry area where we've had major concerns and complaints?
I believe that is. Staff is working on identifying the project areas, and I think that is one that he has, our interim public works director, Mr. Shaw, has a list of areas that we're going to be working on that.
It's, excuse me, it's in the process of going out to bid. It's, I believe, Michael, it's pretty much done. You just need to send it out and get the bids, and then we'd be working on it.
That particular location?
Yes.
Fier?
For the 17-18 budget, we budgeted 615 for Measure V. Are we on target for that, or where are we? What have we brought in?
I believe so, but I'll double check for you.
Okay, so that would give us, if we had expenditures of 431 and we actually met our target of 615, give us about 183 overage. So then where we're shortfalling the 95,000, that would be made up with the
Correct.
overage from this year.
I
Correct.
believe if I can identify on that, as far as the 615, at that point, that was all Measure V, and then we had to separate some of that to the 20% alternative mode from that full amount. So
Well,
at that
right,
time, we
so
hadn't
I was
done
showing
that.
here that we would have 183, but then back here in the beginning, we have sidewalks, improvement, just some other different items up here that I had asked if those were coming out of Measure V, and I believe the answer was yes. So what is?
That's right. So if you look at Fund number 7 and 8, last year, since it was a new measure adopted, so we did not have all the details at that point, so we budgeted all $615,000 under one fund. But going next year, we are splitting that 80-20 into two different funds. So next fund we have Measure V, 20% alternative. So if you combine them both, the total revenue would be $625,000. Lori was trying to explain that. But answer to your question, yes.
Okay, so I see on account 0007 an expected revenue of 615, and then I see on 0008 an expected revenue of 615.
That should be less than 615 because we had to do 80% and 20%. So
So we want
both
20%
numbers-
of 615?
combined, that number should be 615.
So for the 0007, it should be 492,000,
Correct.
and then for the other one,
Whatever left, yes,
123,000.
correct.
And we're expecting expenditures, so that puts it at 492, and we're expecting to spend 595, so that puts us 103,000 over. Of the 123, the 20% alternative modes, earlier in the budget where we talked about things that were coming out of Measure V, for instance, the pedestrian bike pack infill, Buhack Side Road infill, when you total all of that, it exceeds the 123 that we're going to have as our 20%. Am I looking at that wrong?
Like I said, just because it was budgeted as a combined fund last year, so I did not break down all those expenditures, but if it's still under the limit of 615, so we do have a fund balance under both funds, 0007 and 0008, because I believe all those projects we budgeted last year or this current fiscal year, they were not completed, so we did not spend all those funds yet.
And last year was a partial year when we started
Correct.
Measure V, so it wasn't a full year of revenue.
So there might be some lag in receiving those payments as well.
So before we spend this, though, we should see exactly what was left over, because if I take a couple of the items back from the front page that are going to be allocated, and you just kind of do quick figures in your head, we are spending more than we are bringing in. Even though we have an excess, even though we have a little
we
savings in that
projected-
account,
We projected, of course, more, but then, like I said, maybe all those projects are not done, so we did not spend all those funds yet. We projected to
well,
spend.
then we can't still project more funds this year until we know what we have.
Right.
So we need to,
I'll
the
confirm.
going out has to be smaller than the coming in, and on that, it's not, I don't think. I think we're just kind of running quick numbers up here, falling shy of a little over $200,000.
Before this meeting, I confirmed with our project accountant, and she confirmed that there was still some savings from previous years. That's why we budgeted this higher amount.
I know, but
But I will confirm.
when we say some savings, I'm off almost $200,000, so some savings, 10,000, 20,
Okay.
200,000. Because if we spend that and it's not here through Measure V, that comes out of the general fund, correct? And we don't have it.
No, it won't come out. I mean, it would have to,
It
but
would have to,
it
so
won't.
we need to scale back, on, again, we're spending it before it's coming in. And I know that there's things that need to be, that are urgent to be fixed, but we're spending it before we know what we have to spend.
No, I completely understand.
If we can
yes.
defer to Michael, I don't know if he wants to input. I think these are actual, I mean, these, as far as
Sure.
what we have been
So
quoted.
our Measure V expenditures, the last time I looked, total were around $23,000 versus several $100,000 of revenue received. There are several projects that are planned for the city that are far in excess in terms of cost of what the city would realize in one particular year. But I have worked with the project accountant to make sure that the planned revenues aren't exceeding, or the planned expenditures aren't exceeding what we project for revenues. And we track that with MCAG very closely on a monthly basis to see whether or not we're matching expectations, falling short, or exceeding what we've projected. I do share your concern, and we're watching it very closely.
When we're talking, so when LaQuinda was saying that we did have some money left over from last year, the total we spent was $23,000, and we brought in approximately
615.
$615,000.
That sounds about right.
So we have approximately $500,000 in excess money in that account at this time.
Correct.
And I think it should be noted also, and I know it doesn't reflect through these numbers and all that, but the projections and our actuals are running around 10% higher than expected. So if there's a silver lining to all of this, that would be one of them. So, Mr. Creighton? I'm sorry, were you done?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
So on here where it shows on the 17-18 budget of the expenditures being $431,318, those were not spent?
I'm sorry, I haven't seen a copy of this document yet.
That's okay.
Let me look.
That was the budgeted amount, so it was not spent.
Not spent. Okay, we only spent $23,000.
That's, yes, and that's why if you look, it's pretty much the same, almost carried over minus what was actually spent.
When are we going to have the actuals on this?
They come in on a quarterly. We just received the last payment in March, is that not correct? March or April?
The payments are issued monthly, but they generally come a month in arrears. And so we recognize the revenue generally in a different month because they send it right at the end of the month. And then we report our expenditures on a quarterly basis, and those are overseen by Citizens Oversight Committee for Measure V as well.
Okay. It's just hard to look at 500 coming in, 595 going out. You know there's some overage, but how, according to this, we don't know what the overage is. What this looks like is that we overspent by $123,000. So we're looking at numbers that really aren't even relative at all.
So, LaQuinda, to go on top of what Ms. Vieira's has to say there, could we not just show another line item? When you come up with these numbers here on the right, the 595, you could show in the revenue column, instead of just the 615, what's left over. Like Mike was saying, we did 23,000 of 600,000 or whatever it was, that 500,000 left over. We need to see the balance so that when we approve this, it's like council's saying, we're going into a deficit, but actually staff has almost $500,000 banked in accounting for these projects. So we need to see the data. We're not privy to everything you guys have.
Right, so right now this information is limited just because we are working based on the budgeted numbers for current fiscal year, because the year is still open, and usually we do not put actuals in the budget because that's a published document, and of course the books are still open, so we only include budgeted numbers. And since this budget measure is new, so we have very limited information. But the budget document we have, it does have a page in the front which has all the fund balances on there for each fund. So that will show you how much fund balance you have under each fund. So that can basically answer your question better, kind of. But I see this is limited information, so it can confuse.
Yeah, I think where I'm going with that is that we're in June, July is the fiscal year end. Invoices should have been, we have the accountant over there taking invoices in for the projects. You have a very good understanding where we're at financially by May. So you could, if you were hundreds of thousands of dollars to the positive by May and you had all your receipts in on those projects, you could easily close this gap by identifying that right here. Then we wouldn't be so confused, and we're not about to go to a deficit spending based off the numbers we see here. So you have to help us get to the point where you guys want us to be.
Right. But even though our fiscal year ends on June 30th, we do have until end of August to enter all the invoices. Projects like this, sometimes invoices do come in late. And they could be large invoices at one time too. So, but just because the process is basically until, you know, the numbers are not finalized, books are not closed, we don't put them in the budget document, but you're always welcome to request that information if
So let's go apples for apples here. You're confident enough that we have enough money to cover the 95,000. I'm not confident enough because I don't see the numbers and you say they're coming in. So you're not plugging those in, but you're making the assumptions. So what you made your assumption on, we need to see that what you made the assumption on. Do you follow the trend there?
I see, yes.
That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Vineyard?
Actually, I was kind of headed the same direction as far as showing the carryover, but I do understand explanation due to the finance, the bills and stuff, and being on the finance committee, get carrying over for August, sometimes September. Perhaps the addendum could be put in our boxes showing.
The change order. And,
Yeah,
I can
so
do
that, so not necessarily, it doesn't show here, but at least we can see that and see where it's at, because those are going to change in the next 2 or 3 months with the extra bills, but at least we have some idea how much is kind of in there. Maybe that will assist us all to get a better idea.
We can include all these funds for the financial update for the quarterlies, so those numbers will be included in there.
Would that help? I mean, I think it would.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You may. What would you like to say? Yes, you have to come up there. How long have you been here, Linda?
We're back here.
Full-
Excuse me, Linda Dash, Atwater. Okay. We are in a bad financial state right now. And I have to agree with Mr. Creighton, Mr. Vineyard, and Cindy Vera that, you know, it's not transparent, folks. How can you see, okay, I'm not a CPA, but I'm full charge through financial, and it looks like there's, it's when you want to watch how much you're spending, you want to watch if you really do have $95,000 sitting there someplace. Is it there? Is it going to be there 2 months from now? I mean, we've got the end of the fiscal year coming in a couple of weeks, and I know you kind of go over a little bit, but I agree, and again, I'm going to say, because I'm old, back when the earth was cooling, when I was in the council, we had a book. We could all burn up, and we could see, shut up, Brian. We could look and we could see, okay, we had $200,000 that we budgeted, so we spent $50,000 to ABC Contracting, another $50,000 to Paul Creighton, whatever, another $100,000, oh, we have no more money.
So
It
we
did
used to
happen back then.
have budgets like that. Somewhere since you left, we went to a, what do you call this budget?
It's a crystal ball budget.
It's
okay? It's a crystal ball budget. You got to look in there and kind of see. I agree. Because, you know, at home like that, if I see that I'm kind of getting there close, I'm going to quit going out and go, I won't go to Nordstrom this month, okay? I'll wait till next month, you know, or I won't go, you know, buy. That's the way it is with the city, and I know I'm singing to the choir, but that's the way it is. And if it takes staff an extra 40 hours to redesign the budget book, it's sure, I think, going to save us some money in the long run. And we're not going to go over budget and say, oh my God, well, we got to take it out of the police department, so there's no cops for a month, okay? I'm just exaggerating, but you're borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, and it's crazy, and I think it's dangerous. That's all I have to say.
Ms. Vieira.
So I know that, I just feel like we did our budget last year, and you know, I know we cut. I feel like we continue to look at this, and I don't feel that there is enough detail. When we have to start making cuts, we can't just take a whole group out. So maybe we need to get that agendized somewhere to go back to the line-by-line budget. It's really hard because unfortunately it's still cuts that have to be made, and from this it's hard to tell. We're looking at a budget that needs to be, you know, considered and passed. We might as well just say, oh, we have I can't make heads or tails just with those numbers right there. Not your fault. I'm just saying, I think not only are our finance broken, but I think our process is broken. There's no way to break down and see. So for instance, you know, some project that we're spending $395,000 on, do we get any breakdown of that? That's for roads, sidewalks, and trees. Well, we only have 385, so we can say, well, we can do the roads and sidewalks, we can't do the trees. We need to somehow start from scratch and say, okay, we have a $10 million budget. What's the most important thing? We divvy that out. What's the second most important thing? Well, we're going to have to go backwards. I'm afraid if we just continue with what we have no idea what we're adding or cutting. It's just too general. And to me, and maybe it has to be done by a certain time, looking at these numbers it's almost, not that I'm not wanting to be disrespectful. I know you're working with the numbers you have, but we're trying to pass a budget that's not even true. It's like saying, okay, I got my bank statement, it says I have $1,100 in there. Woohoo, I have $1,100. No, you don't, because you wrote checks. But then I budgeted on $1,100 because I don't even have the true facts, and I feel kind of like that's what we're working with here. Case in point with the Measure V. That's a $500,000 difference, and it's kind of almost like, okay, well, just let's not be robots. Let's just say, okay, I just don't think that there's enough information here and I know it's the system, and you're doing your job, everybody's doing their job, but I think not only is the budget broken, I think the system's broken. And there's a lot of like blacked out stuff here. I don't know what's there. Just kind of confusing.
Mr. Creighton.
I've been saying that since I got on the council, that we need to go back to what Ms. Dash had when she was on the council, when the earth was cooling. And no slight to staff. I think that as a council, we need to look at this and make a decision. We could talk about it and then not do anything. But if we're going to ask staff to do this, how do we help staff get the tools they need to get back to where we used to be for the I don't know the accounting term you'd call that, for the detailed budget, but maybe we need to hire somebody to come in and help get the right budget, to get the correct budget we need, with a professional to come in to reestablish the whole system the way it used to be. So you could go to the old budget 15, 20 years ago, and you knew what they spent on every line item.
Do we have the software to do a line-by-line budget?
We do. Springbrook should allow you to do that.
We don't. We have Springbrook, which has only account numbers, same way we have it listed here. So when I upload this budget to Springbrook, basically, I do not have the option to describe like each line item. So I can pull details for each account, who will be paid, which vendor, but then, of course, that would be all that manual process, which will require a lot of manual work.
So to finish what I was saying, we need to look at other municipalities have Springbrooks, and they do the detail that I'm asking for, that Ms. Dash mentioned, that Cindy's wanting. So somewhere, we don't have something on our dashboard for that, or something's missing, but we need to get to that. So I'm asking the council, she doesn't have what she needs. We're asking for what we used to have here since Atwater was incorporated, details. And then back in the downturn, we went to a generalized budget with generalized fund numbers and descriptions. We want to get back to the detailed before the downturn of 2010 or 2009. How do we get there? That's what I'm asking. I want to go back to that. I think other people were asking the same thing. So, Mayor, how do we do that?
I'm not so sure we can do it in the time that we have for getting this budget.
But if we
I get what you're saying, though.
I'm afraid of doing a poor budget, and then the state says, well, what the heck is that? And they're not going to be able to make heads or tails like we can.
I get you, and again, you know, to build software and have all that, and have a detailed itemized or line items that would be detailed as what you're saying. I agree. It's you know, it would be a lot more beneficial to be able to go down that road. I'm just looking at it right now with the constraints of the time frame that we have to get this budget completed. But
if we get it wrong, what my big
I get that too. I'm just saying, you know, to get the software, to do the things that you want to do, to input it and all that kind of stuff, while we're trying to put together whatever LaQuinder's trying to get insofar as a budget. I don't know how we get that given the time frame that we're having to work within right now.
I'm just curious why our Springbrook wouldn't have what other municipals that have Springbrook. What are we missing on that?
I don't know. I don't know, and
that's what the
above my pay
discussion.
grade. Yeah, I get you, and we need to ask that question. Maybe LaQuinder, you can find out. Yes, you may, certainly.
We do have RGS at our disposal, and I can speak with them and see what they might suggest, seems how they work with several other municipalities, so we can look at that and see.
Sure.
We may not be able to do a whole new program, but they may have some suggestions that we can do to get you what you need.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Mayor, if I could, one of the things that we can do is I can put Maureen LaQuinder in touch with Joan Michaels Aguilar out of Dixon. She's president-elect for CSMFO, and and Dixon uses Springbrook, and they may have some suggestions that they might be able to offer to her.
Okay.
Yeah, we may luck out. It might be quite simple, and that would be a big help for LaQuinder to get what we're looking for. So
Yeah. Okay, we'll make that inquiry and see if we can accommodate.
May I, since my light's been on, may I make a comment?
Yeah, hold on, Linda.
Please.
Mr. Vineyard's been waiting very patiently.
Because I've been addressing this since, like Mr. Creighton, since I've been on here. I've suggested, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 city managers. We have colleges all around us that have finance classes, finance interns. You know, people that want to have on-job training that could assist us with this type of thing, assist us with the window. We have people in the community that have finance knowledge that maybe, instead of paying overtime, paying money out to any other organization or group that could assist us. I know for a fact that the budget hasn't always been passed on July 1. True. You know, I'm not for pushing a budget through just because we have to have it done by July 1. I understand, you know, the state has given us the time. But at the same token, if they look at we're pushing something through, to me, that's going to send up another red flag that are we in a hurry to push something through to appease them? Or are we putting something through to actually try to fix the issues we have? And I'm not willing to push something through just to appease somebody. I want to fix something. I want to find all the solutions we could find, and I want to have all the information to do it correctly. And I don't care if it takes till October myself. It's happened before in this city to get it done right. But we have people out there that are willing to help. They have to be given strict guidelines, and they have to follow them. But we have alternatives to do that rather than go out and spend more money. There's a lot of financial people out in this city that have a lot of knowledge that can assist us. So we need to find those alternatives as well. Thank you.
Ms. Fier.
So for the software we use, we have a software that we use in my business called Encompass, and almost every mortgage company I've ever worked with, so for the past 5 companies, use the same Encompass. But for every company, it's different. So when you purchase the software, you can purchase, there's 10,000 pieces to Encompass, and maybe this company purchased 2,500 of them, and this company purchased 5,000 of them, because some companies, you can use all the buttons, and some of them you only have like 10 buttons. I'm wondering if we just purchased a smaller portion of our software, and if it's something that would be cheaper just to upgrade it. You don't have to buy all new software, but maybe you could just buy Part B if we already own Part A or something like that. Something to look into.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm sorry, Linda, go ahead.
No, I just noticed on your warrant list that you have a check to Springbrook for about $60-some-thousand. And what's wrong with contacting our old accountant, Bill Zanoni? I'm sure he could probably pull up our, I know that probably doesn't sit well with Mr. White, but I'm against this RGS because a $75,000 contract, you folks, no, don't laugh, it's not funny. You signed a $75,000, or to go up to $75,000. I think Mr. Zanoni didn't do us wrong, and I think he would probably know how we kept our books way back when, close to when the earth was cooling, and we wouldn't have to spend a little extra to RGS. I have nothing against RGS, but I'm saying contact some of the folks that knew how we did our stuff before, how we itemized and had departmental type accounting. But you know, all of this new stuff, it's great if you got a whole heck of a lot of money in your pocket, but we don't have all that money because it's getting eaten up by professional fees. So,
Ms. Fier.
Just to kind of answer that, we did reach out last year to Bill Zanoni, and there was a reason why. I think his time. He did? Was available? That's what I mean. I thought I was under the impression he was not available for us. So
Actually, to answer your question, this is basically his formatting, and in his kind of professional opinion, he believes that the budget's supposed to be a summary. The department head's responsibility is to keep all those details for each account. So that was basically his, I guess, thought process behind creating budget, because I just inherited his worksheets the way he did, but last year we did add details under some accounts which has more than one kind of project or services going on. But just because our Springbrook does not give us that option to break each account by subcategories, it is very time consuming to fill all those numbers manually.
Mr. Raymond.
Like Ms. Dash, I spoke with Bill Zanoni, and he was also told me he was available to help. But to what you just said with the summary budget, I think that's fine, but we also need the details the department heads have.
Right.
So, I mean, we would need both, not just this document, so that way we can make a better decision as far as moving forward.
Mr. Green.
So, the comment was made, bring Bill back. We bring back the guy that created the summary budget, that took away the detailed budget. We're not looking to do that. So, I know that it's important to hear input from everybody, but we need to move forward to solve the problems we had. Mr. Vineyard said he wants to solve it. I agree with him. And I think we can't keep doing the same thing over and over again. They went to the summarized budget because we were in a financial crisis back in 2010. They made do with what they had to do. We're trying to get up out of the trench now, and we have to do the detailed budget. And Doug made reference to a lady that's in an organization that's a professional accounting, what was the acronym?
CSMFO.
Certified
I don't know.
Municipal
LaQuinta would probably know.
Financial Advisors.
It's the Municipal Financial Advisor. She's the president-elect of
President and expert.
statewide of the California organization.
So whether it's free or you have to pay a little bit, if you have to pay $2 to save $100, you're making $98. I don't think anybody in the council wants to go spend $100,000 or anything else, but we do want to, as Mr. Vineyard said, get it right. And we haven't got it, we've made do to now, and I think everyone on the council wants to get it right, and nobody wants to rush it or provide something that's our best guess. We want to say, if we all left tomorrow, that you guys could come up here and you know exactly where the money was at, what we're doing. And that's what we're trying to do. So I think we're all in agreement on that, so that's a good thing. And I think whatever we need to do to help LaQuinta to get there, that's our responsibility to make sure she gets the tools she needs to get there if we have to find someone. So I'm glad we're there.
Okay. So we'll make that contact with the person that you suggested and have her or him discuss that with LaQuinta, and we'll see if we can't expedite that type of a detailing.
Continue on this, or do we want to pause, get that feedback?
Well, yeah. Well, let's go through the remainder of the time. We got only 30 minutes here, so let's go through what LaQuinta has, and then we'll get it all detailed here again. We'll, I'm sure, be meeting again on this.
So the next fund would be Measure V 20% alternative. So that would basically be the split of total revenue. So we are projecting 125 for that. Then we are listing about 5 projects under that fund. So total becomes to $250,000 again, just because we do have a fund balance available for those projects as well. Any other questions on that? Next would be police grants fund. We do not have that much activity going under that fund anymore because we don't have any active grants. Next would be our gas tax.
Excuse me, Mayor.
I'm sorry, Mr. Raymond.
For the police grants fund, are we just not going after any grants over there, or are you being conservative in not putting all your eggs in one grant basket?
Lori can answer that question.
So right now, we haven't applied for, all our open grants have been closed out. So our police hiring grant fund has been closed out. We're not looking at hiring because the hiring grant fund at this point, because obviously we have to absorb it after the 3-year. We will still be looking at all funds available. I know that we'll have so just drew a blank. It's not, what is the grant that we use? It's an annual grant that we get based on per capita. So that will be the JAG. We'll be going after the JAG grant. That's annual.
Okay.
So
And we'll still be
but we
looking
don't
at-
have the funds that are going to be allocated to us, so we're not putting those until we actually get actual numbers.
Okay.
Then we'll come to you with the amount that we're going to receive and then a project and do a budget amendment to offset that.
Okay, so we are still going to go after the grants.
Oh,
This
sure.
is just a conservative.
It's
not
going to be a
counting
little
any-
bit slower because we're going to have
Okay.
to involve the police department itself, and I believe the chief can speak to the one that they're looking at right now as far as body cams. So they are looking at partnering with other agencies as well on some of the grant funding that we can do that way as well.
Okay, thank you.
So we are projecting revenue for gas tax would be $710,000. As you can see, it's less than last year because we had to move out SB1 and AB1 account to a separate fund. Then expenditures for
I'm
that.
sorry, LaQuinder, I don't want to
go
cut
ahead.
you off on that one. So just so that we know, all of these things that we're looking at now where we're moving things, that's based on the audit. They want to see budgets where the items are actually broken up and put in the right fund rather than moving them around.
The same
We're
thing we
actually-
want done.
Yes, so that's what we're doing.
So under the expenditure side, we only have one project listed, which is Buhack roadside sidewalk infill. This project is almost complete, so that's why the amount is only $2,600. The rest is basically, we have 4 employees listed under that fund for full-time salaries. Then we have all the benefits expenditures. And after that, if you come to account number 2020, that's where the all personal salaries and benefit expenditures end. So these are operating expenditures starting from 2020 account number. So under special departmental expenditures, we have all these details for you for each project or service or the material we need to buy.
Yeah,
Mr. Creighton?
so this is exactly what we were talking about. If you guys have, you see where it's, ours is grayed out, but that's the detail. So you have fund 101130331001. It shows that fund, then it shows the subcategory with employees, and it would continue down with other things in that fund. So that's what this is where we're going to get the level of detail, but even more so than this on what we're looking at here. So everything that we see grayed out as we move through this is going to be that detail that we're asking for. There's not too many of them in here at all, but there's a few. So yes, to answer your question, Lori, that's exactly what we're talking about. What's that? No, the gray part, we don't show any previous years, LaQuinder. So
Correct.
is that
So
just new this year?
I did, yes. It's not redacting, it's just basically for previous years, I don't have detailed by each project because our software limits that, so. I mean, we can have that information, it would be really time consuming.
Why even gray it out? Why can't we just see it and not gray it out?
Oh, I can leave it blank, but it's easy to follow. Yes, I mean, then you can see the, yes. I mean, I can take that gray out, it's not a problem.
And some of those things may not even be budgeted or under those categories. I mean, there may be other things other than weed spray, et cetera, et cetera.
But the way you show the 154 is that subgroup on the right equals the 154,308.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. So I think that's why she blocked it out that way. So you don't add the two as expenses. You got $154,308. Do you see that? Right at the top of the gray?
No, you need to come down a little bit,
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, keep
LaQuinder.
going.
Keep-
So, I
up,
mean-
up,
For the employee expenses.
Go up further.
Go to fund,
Oh, you're talking about salary, okay.
we're not on the
sorry.
same page.
I'm
She's
ahead.
coming down the salaries, street workers. There you go.
Okay, so what you guys are looking at right there, so the 154,308 is that expense for that department. Then where we spent the money, the details on the right is what we've been asking for the last 20 minutes ago.
Right.
So that's what we're trying to explain where we're going to get. Thank you, LaQuinder.
You're welcome. Let me know if you have any questions for any of these accounts. Of course, the total expenditures for that fund comes up to $858,000.
On the 1-ton utility, was there a figure in there and it's just got taken out recently, or because it's yellow? I'm just checking.
This one?
Yes.
We did have 1-ton utility cab truck for, I believe, $50 or $60,000. But since, you know, the revenue was moved from this fund to different fund, so we did not want to overspend this fund. So I talked to Brian Shaw, and he advised that we can budget that expense next year.
Okay. Well, the reason I'm asking is because I broached this elsewhere. We do have that old Cal Fire double cab pickup out there that has a blown engine that, you know, I believe may still have some good wear in it other than the blown engine. Might be able to fix that for a whole lot cheaper than $50,000 and have an excellent utility cab truck. So it might be something we might want to look at, and therefore we could save about $38,000, $40,000. Just a thought.
Any other questions on this fund? Next would be local transportation fund. So we have only 2 projects listed under this fund. This fund is exceeding by $20,000, and again, we do have fund balance available to cover that additional expenditure. Next would be 1015 Traffic Circulation Fund. We have all these taxes bringing in the revenue for that fund. So the revenue is projected at $92,000, and we only have 1 project listed under. Part of that project is a Buhack sidewalk infill. $2,600 was budgeted under gas tax, and $3,000 is budgeted under this fund. Like I said, this project is very close to be completed. Next would be Applegate Interchange Fund. We are only projecting $1,000 in revenue. There is no expenditure listed for that. Under RSTP fund, we are projecting to have revenue of $315,000, and we have 2 projects listed under that. This is the new fund to be created to separate SB1 monies from gas tax fund. So 1018, this 504,000 is basically zeroed out in previous years because it was budgeted under gas tax in prior years.
LaQuinder, is there somewhere that you have in a light item here for SB1 funds, projected or otherwise?
That's the one. SB1 road maintenance and rehab under 1018.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Any questions on that, Mr. Price?
So the citywide road painting and curb gutter, is that all under that same 1018, 1080 dash?
Correct. So as you saw, these projects were also listed under Measure V as well, so we are splitting the cost.
Okay, thank you.
And 1020 for Parks and Recreation Fund. We are projecting a revenue of $210,000. And we have only 2 projects listed under that. Next fund would be,
Before we get to the next ones.
sorry.
So in the Park and Rec Fund, so the revenue from field rentals, youth programs and everything else, that doesn't come under this?
No,
That comes
this
under a different
is
item?
This is different. This is all the impact fees that comes from the developers.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Ms. Veer.
So on a last year, we had a revenue of 121 with an expenditure of 83. Was there previously money in that account, or, because that's a
yes.
difference of about 62,000, so is it going to be defunct by 62,000, or was there, what's the fund balance?
Actually, this fund has a significant, I want to say about $2 million fund balance at the moment. And this this fund is restricted, so it cannot have any personnel cost just because the revenue is not guaranteed. It's based on the new development. So it will fluctuate year to year, but we can have professional services agreement or contract paid under this fund.
For Park and Recreation?
Correct. Moving forward, next would be 1055 Neighborhood Stabilization Fund. The only revenue we have is the interest earned. And this fund does have a fund balance as well.
How much is that balance?
For some reason, I cannot open my spreadsheet on this laptop. It's super old, but I'll get you that fund balance.
Okay, thank you.
These are just minor funds. They have basically interest earned income only, but these are restricted funds. Then we have 1091 Police Facility Impact Fee Fund. We are projecting to get revenue of $40,000 under that fund, and we do not have any expense there. So another major fund we have is the redevelopment obligation retirement. This one does have revenue comes from ROPS. You're budgeting or projecting revenue of $1,068,000 for next fiscal year. And it does have a few projects listed under that project. That fund. And fund number 3064 and 3066, they are basically related with each other. As you can see, there is a transfer to successor agency debt services. Those are the bonds we have, so that payment is being made from 3064, but the revenue is comes from redevelopment obligational retirement fund. So these are basically going in and out expenditures. So only expense it has is the bonds payment.
Ms. Viera.
What is the, let me make sure I'm on the proposed budget.
Please speak into your mic, sorry.
Sorry, sale of real property for $500,000 on 3065. What property is that?
I'm sorry, Laquindra, what account number is that?
3065?
That's the property over on Bell Avenue, isn't it?
6022.
Okay.
My page number is
That'd be the,
36.
mini
Showing
storage.
10. I'm only showing 10.
No, right here.
Not by bill.
If you go to 3065, 00006022, sale of real property under low mod income
6022.
housing asset fund.
Okay, so yes, that is a property that we have in escrow over on Bell Drive. And that is redevelopment funding, so that has to go into low mod housing. It cannot be deposited to the general fund.
After all these small funds, the next big one we have is the 4090 CFD number 1 trust fund. So there is only assessment district's fee, which is only 500 projected. And I guess we are talking about assessment districts in our regular meeting tonight. So just because majority of the fees were not adopted last year, so we are not projecting full revenue for that. Moving to fund number 5,000, if you don't have any questions for all those small funds. This is the maintenance district's reserve. As you know, we do have about 54 different districts, but the monies are usually funded under 5,000 fund number. Then all these costs and revenue is being allocated to all those 54 districts. So as you can see, we are projecting only $38,000 in revenue Due to non-approval of all those fees current fiscal year, so we are only, the council only approved landscaping district's revenue, so which is only $38,000. And the engineering report will be coming to your attention next city council meeting for adoption. If we are not going to adopt that, then of course this fund will not cover all the expenditures projected under this fund. So at this point, we are projecting all those expenditures, but we are only projecting revenue based on whatever we have approved currently, which is only $38,000. So looking at under professional services, we have all these agreements in place with the different vendors. We do have 2 streets and parks maintenance workers under this fund.
I'm sorry, did you say 2?
Yes, 2.
Are they both full-time or part-timers?
They're full-time.
So we're looking at a negative balance of about $255,000.
Correct, if fees are not approved. And those costs will be absorbed by general fund, and general fund do not have extra funds available to cover that cost, so.
And that's coming back at our next meeting?
The engineering report for next fiscal year's fees, yes, next meeting. But tonight we will have an amendment to a general fund for the current fiscal year. Any questions on that fund? Next fund we have is 50/50 CFD districts. We are projecting revenue of $465,000 based on 5% annual increase. We do have two police officers budgeted under this fund. Majority of the cost for this fund is basically personnel. So the total cost comes up to $483,000 for that fund.
And that negative difference is going to have to be made up by the general fund as well, correct?
Correct. But since we kept this fund without any cost for fiscal year 15-16, we still have a negative fund balance of, under this fund, about $100,000. But we could not keep this fund without any officers for longer than 1 year. If there's no questions, then we are moving to Water Enterprise Fund, Fund number 6,000. For water enterprise and sewer enterprise funds, we do have a Prop 218 study pending, which will be coming in front of the City Council on June 25th to take an action. So these numbers are projected based on that study. So we are projecting to have a revenue of 5 million under that fund. We have professional services, then following to that we have personnel, salaries and expenditures. We have special departmental expenditures with details.
Go ahead.
So LaQuinder, on 6,70101001, the new position, the maintenance worker, what are those job duties going to be? Is that somebody who's going to the well sites, cleaning the well sites up, painting fire hydrants?
Brian can answer that question.
Yeah, basically, it's just going to be like a worker to help out the operators. If they have to dig for water lines, or they go out and do painting, anything that doesn't have them opening up the water system.
So they'll be able to do all the manual labor that needs to be done around town, painting hydrants and cleaning the well sites and
Correct.
things like that, okay. Brian, I got a question for you. The Public Works yard, do you have anything in here to do repairs on that building? I saw the gutters are falling off and it's in general disrepair.
Yeah,
This would be a good fund to
We
add some of those.
went split between three ways, between water, sewer, and sanitation.
Where is it? I'm missing it right here.
It's probably not on there yet.
We added that project this morning, so
Okay,
it's not
then we're
included
good.
in this spreadsheet.
Good, okay. Thank you.
It would be under professional services.
Thank you, LaQuinder. Well 20's in here, Brian?
Yeah, it's further down. It's under a CIP, 6001-1080-H010.
44? Okay. Good, that's on schedule, good, okay. That's at the golf course, right?
Correct.
Thank you.
And I would like to clarify, under, towards the bottom there says interfund loan payment. So this would be the last payment for that loan we had from sewer to water. That loan would be paid off this year, next fiscal year, on July 1st. Any other questions on Water Enterprise Fund? Would you like me to continue, Mr. Mayor, or it's 6 o'clock?
Yeah, we're getting close to the golden hour here. Are there any items that the council would like to address, maybe jumping ahead? If not, we'll go ahead and reserve the remainder until a time and date to be determined here so that we can complete. Okay. Does that work for everyone? Okay.
Need a
All right.
Need a motion on that?
I'm sorry?
Do we need a motion or anything on that? No? Okay, just
No.
want to make sure.
Okay. All right, for the time being here, we're going to take a 10-minute recess and come back, and then we'll get into our regularly scheduled meeting, okay?